earlier you decide that you're going to make a business of this, the earlier that you start doing certain things like writing down your goals, which you should do personally anyway. What are the goals? What do you want to do? I want to be able to quit my full-time job that I either love or hate or indifferent to in a year. And I want to do this, or I want to be able to afford 2 vacations a year, not one.
All right. Welcome to this episode of Monetizing Your Mental Capital. I'm your host, Will Christensen. This is sponsored by Seller Labs, one of the leading tools for new Amazon sellers. Scott, welcome back to the show.
Hey, well, good to see you again.
So Scott and I go way back to my days of data automation, and he's someone I trust to try new ideas on. And I don't know that he knew this. I can't remember if I told him or not, but I basically said, "Hey, I'm starting this podcast." This was October of last year, and I want you to come on and be one of the guests. And he was like, "Well, can you send me the questions ahead of time?" And I was like, "No, because I don't know what questions I'm going to ask yet. I know the theme. I know it's going to be monetizing your mental capital." And so if you've been listening to every episode of this and eating it up, know that you're talking to one of the people who helped me engineer the process around our questions that we ask every time. So if you want to hear about the first time Scott monetized his mental capital and what he did monetizing mental capital in installing RAM into really old Macintosh computers, highly recommend that first episode. And it doesn't follow our normal script because we were figuring out what the normal script would be. It was fun. All right, so we're going to dive in here. This is season 2, and season 2 is a little bit different than season 1. We're looking for monetizable nuggets. We're looking for things that you would give away to friends in coffee shops and or to potential prospect clients, because you're like, I want to establish that I'm an expert and I've got a lot of value to bring. And so we're hunting for those and trying to share them with the sellers who are listening and help them identify some of the processes you used to identify these nuggets as well, so that they can start to look and say, oh, what other nuggets could I monetize? Imagine you're in a coffee shop, a friend who just got started on Amazon. They're making a couple $1,000s a month. And they're like, hey, could you advise me in product launches or reviews or maybe product listings or advertising or scaling? Which one of those do you think you could help with most?
Really, scaling's the best, but also, is this going to be a business or a hobby? Really, it's kind of the mindset things are really where I probably can provide the most value to someone that is an entrepreneur or becoming an entrepreneur.
Gotcha.
It all kind of fits around scaling from the ground up, and there are different things you have to do at different stages.
Gotcha. And I can imagine that that is a fairly interesting consideration in terms of, is this a business or is this a hobby? So, Scott, I
Mhm.
guess my question would be, if we're going to pretend I'm that friend in the coffee shop,
Mhm.
I'm doing a couple thousand a month. How do I know if I've found a hobby or a business?
Oh, that's a great question. First, you can definitely fit if you think it's something you're passionate about. And then what's the deal? Are you doing this so you can generate a little bit of extra side money that hopefully your spouse or whoever will let you spend on whatever your hobby is? Because typically, most people's entrepreneur tends to focus on something they're hobby in. And then if they go buy it at cost overseas, they can save money supporting their ski hobby or whatever other thing they're really into. Because most people don't, some people pick businesses that are super boring, they have no interest or know nothing about because they want to be an entrepreneur. So most people tend to find something they're at least interested in and happy to do. But you really early on should decide that, hey, look, and the earlier you decide that you're going to make a business of this, the earlier that you start doing certain things like writing down your goals, which you should do personally anyway. What are the goals? What do you want to do? I want to be able to quit my full-time job that I either love or hate or indifferent to in a year. And I want to do this, or I want to be able to afford 2 vacations a year, not one. Or I'm X age, I want to start working towards putting money aside for my kids' college, whatever
Okay.
those goals are. Okay. Making money isn't empowering, doing stuff with money is. Okay. And it could be I want to spend money with charity or whatever else. So figure out, of course, Simon Sinek, you're big. Why are you doing this thing? But if you think it's going to be a business, then you want to make the pivot to register it with the state, it's free, or it'll cost you 20 bucks and set up your business. Okay. And
Mm.
then you have to register with the IRS to get an I-9, I think, whatever
Oh
it
yeah.
is, the EIN number. And then you open a business bank account, which are free and online, and they're great online banks, and you can do it all online. If you can't get a business credit card, then the key thing is, both for your own accounting and any future accountant, take one of your credit cards and only use it for the business. Okay. Do not commingle your business and personal on the same credit card. If you have to, get another personal credit card and use that. Just
Mm.
that step of going, hey, it's separate. It's still all your money. If you
Yep.
don't make a ton of profit, it's all gonna flow into your personal tax return anyway. Don't worry
That's
about
good advice.
anything else. But it's kind of a mind shift to go, hey, these are the basics I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna make this happen. And then the other thing that I'd warn people, I think entrepreneurship is the third most empowering thing. First is getting married, hopefully well. The second most, well, the number one empowering thing, married. Then kids, you can rate those either one, but those are the two most empowering things you can really do, in my opinion. And then the third is being an entrepreneur frees you up. But you know what you're getting into when you get married. You pretty much know what you're getting into when you have kids. It's a lifelong commitment. I would warn people that, look, becoming an entrepreneur, you're volunteering, okay, choosing to create a business, which means you have to be responsible for accounting and finances and product design and marketing and sales.
Yeah, all the
And
things that.
because in this world,
Oh
and
my
especially in
gosh, yeah.
e-commerce business, you're an IT business as well as a fulfillment business as well as a product business. So you're going to expand and learn so many new things. It's good for you. It's good for your brain. It's good for it can be very empowering, but there's a lot to it. And a lot of people think, I'm just going to focus on this one little thing. And if you just want to buy some stuff online or offshore or whatever, and then just resell it off on the side, but you don't really want to do all those things, then keep it a hobby and just let it flow into whatever and just keep track of it and do whatever. That's great. If you want to make that pivot, it's really pretty.
Interesting. So I feel like in a lot of ways, what you just described is preparing for scaling.
Yes.
But the things you just and I want to go over those very briefly. I also want to anecdotally mention you mentioned most people know what they're getting into when they're getting married. I totally disagree. I had no idea what the heck I was doing and how much of that would shift and how much
Yeah.
of my I lost my mom when I was 10 years old from breast cancer. I had no idea how much of my trauma I would bring into my relationship with
Mm.
my wife and
Yeah.
how much that's affecting us still 12 to 15 years later, right? It's been 28 years since mom passed away,
Yeah.
but it's just been such a crazy difference in my life. And so I actually think marriage is a perfect analogy for what here's the rocks you're going to start to look underneath, and you thought you knew this was going to be when, and
Yeah.
even kids too. I think that's, and I agree with you that there's more perceived knowledge
Mhm.
around those two things. Like entrepreneurship, they're like, that's a black hole. I don't know what's on
Yeah.
the other side. But kids and wife, I think you come in with a conceived notion of what this could be, and then you get disenfranchised or changed around what's there.
Well, great. Keep in mind, I've been with my wife for 30 years. We've been
Yep.
married 28 years. My kids are 20 and 23. So if you'd asked me years ago, yes, from where I'm at, but if you truly want to be challenged and grow and have major ups and probably I would say more ups than downs, those things are there. And the same thing applies to entrepreneurship. But all of those things are very empowering. I had a peer, a good friend of mine, it's an advisor that told me that I'm basically unemployable, which is actually a compliment. At first, I was like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't want to work for anybody else. I would be a nightmare if somebody hired me to be
Oh
an
man.
employee. As a
Oh man.
consultant, I'm all
So
there to help people. So it just depends on, and I've gone through an evolution of those things, but I do like to compare them that you at least, for the most people, part, for whatever education, even if you've got an MBA, some of those
yeah.
people are more clueless than others, that at least looking into marriage, you think you know what you're doing. At least
Yes.
looking into childhood, it's kind of
Yes.
messy and dirty and loud and no
Yes.
sleep at the very beginning, and then other things
Yes.
happen. Most people haven't run and crashed, run and sold, or
Yep.
been in a position of either authority or an operations position inside a small business to see all the different pieces of it to know. And then my whole focus is helping entrepreneurs that out of comfort zone tend to focus on the marketing side of things or the product design thing or the listing or the social commerce side of things.
Right.
And I help them focus back on there are these fundamentals about business that if you do those right, then you've got a solid foundation and it improves your ability to succeed at whatever stage you're in.
I love it. I think what you're describing is definitely an evolution of our expectations
Mhm.
and what that entails in becoming an entrepreneur. So go back over real quick. If I am preparing for scaling,
Mhm.
and we talked about a couple of different categories of things that we could talk about. Um, and one thing we didn't talk about was finances, which I think
Mhm.
for those of you who don't know, Scott has a ton of experience in e-commerce finance. He ran one of the first cloud accounting companies that existed. He kind of defined a lot of that in the trend and even taught a lot of the current cloud accountants how to do their jobs. So he's got a lot of experience from the finance perspective. But let's just go one by one here. For new product launches at scale, that's going to become more difficult. What are some things I should consider about product launches now if I'm in my first year of selling that for setting myself up for success in scaling in product launches and maybe reviews, product listings, advertising, and finance? What would you say?
The probably one of the first things is a laser focus is better than a shotgun focus. Now, maybe if you're at the beginning, I don't know if I want to sell kitchenwares or dog toys or whatever. If you're kind of all over and you're just trying to learn, then you could
Mm.
provide a couple different choices and see what clicks. If you're really not sure, you can try that. But as soon as you can, within months or whatever time frame you set yourself, you need to focus. You
So how do
go,
I
you know,
choose a focus?
it's got to be choose a focus. So if you're unknown, when we started catching clouds, we knew we'd pick a niche. And our first client was an Amazon seller way back in 2011. And then we took on a chamber of commerce and then another e-commerce business and then another business. And then
Gotcha.
within a short while, we went, oh, and then we got rid of all the other clients and focused.
Right.
And that focus provides focus.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and then at each stage, you're like, how do I do this best? Now, before you'd have to find an expert. There were a bunch early on, multi-level marketing scams where you'd pay thousands of dollars to figure out each of these different things, and it would eat up money you could use to buy products, to put online, to turn over, to generate a
They're
profit,
still
cash
out there.
conversion cycle to buy more and do it all over again. The
Yeah.
point is that it's kind of a little more control than going to the stock market, and it can be a lot faster that you can take a few $1,000s and turn it over in 2 months and get whatever percentage back. But these days, you really just want to pay the 20, $30 for ChatGPT or one of the other ones and just constantly ask it questions. I'm about to do this, and then tell it to find you. You have an advisor that you just have to think of the questions or say, I don't know what questions to ask, but this is what I'm trying to do. And keep going and then tell it to give you links and then continually learn to work through those things.
And which tools would you? So you mentioned ChatGPT. I
Mhm.
really love Perplexity. I've
I,
been
I
I've been getting
I
off on that one.
I just went pro on Perplexity and I'm really impressed. Will and I've been doing a bunch of this stuff. We're both longtime IT geeks. We know how to do Google searches. We immediately knew how to do prompts. I have if you don't know, you can set settings where you say,
Yep.
always prompt these prompts. Tell me
Yep.
the unobvious questions. What
Yep.
question didn't I ask? What's the next? Like, I have 20 of my own core things that I use to reprompt so that it automatically does the things I want. Perplexity does that. It's an answer engine versus a search engine or whatever else. Claude is all about language and really strong if you're doing
Yep.
marketing or
Yep.
language and you want to redo
Or
your product
code. It does
listings.
well with code too. I've been impressed with Claude and
And
code.
code. Yeah, correct. So, but any of them, but actually all of them are all it's an arms race right now. So every day everything's getting a
So
little bit better and it'll never be worse than it is now.
Scott,
I'm
tell me. Let's dig into that a little bit. Do you mind going and pulling up your 20 prompts real quick?
sure.
And what I'd love you to do is just give me and I have two questions for you, and we'll edit this out if you say no. But my question is, would you be willing to share those 20 prompts,
Oh yeah,
or a version of them with the listeners?
I have no
Okay,
problems. These are
so
ones.
look in
So
the show notes. So
uh-huh.
if you'll message me those, Scott, on
Yeah.
Slack or something, I will make sure that that gets to the marketing team and it gets into the show notes. And what I'd like you to do is give me a sneak peek. What don't I know about ChatGPT 4 or ChatGPT or LLMs? What don't I know that makes me want to turn on that setting to make sure that I'm getting the best results out of my stuff?
Well, so there are a few things. It's just one, me knowing how I consume data. If I'm going to throw something out, and we're talking about if I'm going to word vomit into ChatGPT, I want to get a result that I want. I know the way I write. I know the way I think. And so my first one is bullet out answers. I can consume more data, but if something gives me these long wrapping sentences and whatever else, I can read it, but I can't consume it. I can't process it fast enough. And then the next one is list external links and supporting information, apps, and blogs. Now, that one, Perplexity does automatically. It's a research engine and it's going to give you an answer with the supporting information that backs it up so I can go to the next level. Because sometimes I'm looking for something, it'll get me an answer and then I'll follow it to the next thing I want to go look at. Next one, list follow-up questions to refine the request. They might go, you asked this, but if you can answer these three things. So I'm I'm looking to change insurance. We're looking to change insurance providers next year. So literally yesterday, I said, pretend you're a insurance expert and agent. What questions do I need to answer for you to give me the right advice? And it gave me like 20 questions. I copied that, pasted it in, and then went into it and answered each question and it gave me answers. And then I did the same thing in another AI. Okay. Because it's comparing multiple opinions. You can get multiple opinions by going across the different AIs. So that was awesome. But things you don't know, I'm always doing comparison matrices and I wanted to compare insurance plans. And so I told Perplexity to do that. And it built me a table that compared the plans and the like 10 things. So you're always asking, nobody will give competitive comparisons to their competitors. But well, this pulled all this different data that's out there and gave me actual tables to do things. So there's so many different things that you can ask. You can almost think of anything. It can't quite do anything, but it's getting closer and closer. So those are some of the things. I told it to list, give me different output options of tasks or Google Sheet or a slide if I'm in Google stuff. Prompt for additional information or additional or missing data. I like my list unobvious questions.
And
Like
and do you
that's one of the key ones where I get some, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. Now, Perplexity, every time you ask a question, when you get to the bottom of ChatGPT, it gives you an answer and it's done. Perplexity every time has four, like you have a plus sign next to FAQs, it'll give you four or five or more additional follow-on questions that other people have asked. And you may just ask the first question and then learn a whole bunch about stuff because it pulls questions that are related to the topic
mm,
because it's an answer engine. So Google is a suggestion engine. I'm going to
mhm,
suggest three pizza places. It's trying to pull together, and I've
mm.
asked it insanely complex questions. Like a huge Starship, I'm going to be watching that later today, the sixth launch. And I said, how much weight could a Starship land with? Now, crazy. So not how much can I put in space, but if I'm sending relief supplies or food or, I don't know, Santa presents instead of his sleigh, if I put them in a Starship, how much weight could I send it up? Could it actually land with again? Now, there's other alternatives in different ways that you might launch it, then it opens up and it parachutes the total amount that it can lift into space, which is
Yeah.
like 50 tons now, about to be 100, and then 200 tons in V3, which is just stupid amounts of stuff. But it did better than anything because it could dig through and look and keep it.
Look
It
through all
it
the different
prompts behind the
articles,
scenes and
analyze.
different prompts and has their own prompts. So those are the things. So and then I've got simple things like my desired tone is informal but professional.
So
And
help me understand, where in ChatGPT are you putting this in? Are you going
so
into
you
like
go
the
to the settings, it's your memorized information because I also have a little overview of me. Look, I'm a consultant and a father, and I'm into hiking and Lord of the Rings and Legos and stuff. And that you can put these different places and it's under settings, memorized or something, but there's a place under your setting in your profile that you can put these in. And then every time you make a prompt, it does this for you. So you have to re-remember it. I have my own AI prompt Google Doc, but I don't copy and paste this in every time. I've been able to save those. You can do it a little bit differently with an add-on tool that I know you use, which is Superhuman.
Sufficient that I didn't need to use Superhuman anymore. God, I flipping
So
love this.
there's a tangent, but
It's good stuff.
and so you can just create a GPT, which is your own unique thing. You can also create a space in Perplexity
Yep.
and say, this space, you're my e-commerce advisor expert before you get to the point of running into
So
me at a coffee shop or paying for someone at my level is, hey, tell me the things I need to
interesting.
do at this space. And then you can get the basics and it can help you with each of those steps.
I love it. And let's imagine that you've amassed a fair amount of information that you want to put into your own LLM and have it just
Mhm.
query your own data.
Mhm.
What would you recommend people mess around with that way?
So there are a couple. The easiest one right now is Google's Notebook LM. So if you use Gmail or you're on Google Workspace, it's just so easy that you open it up, you create a new one, you create a topic, vacation places, I don't care. And then you can just link in YouTube videos. You can link in Google Docs. You can link it. You can't link in Sheets yet. That's a gap
Nope,
at the
they
moment,
haven't
but
done
it'll be
sheets
there.
yet.
Doesn't do
I
Sheets
agree.
yet, but soon it will. And you just attach sources and then you query against it. And I've got some where I've got, and it's limited to 20 sources, but you can very quickly go, wait a minute, I learned a bunch from this, well, a bunch of Will's videos, and you could connect 20 of them and then go, what did Will say about Zapier? And it will pull a little summary up. So you could build a Will Jarvis little thing
So,
together.
so I think I need to do this. I need to go back through because I'm upwards of 100 hours of content that's
Yeah.
been maybe 200 hours of content that's been
Mhm.
distributed over the internet around things that I personally have said. And so at that point, like, there's a lot of me talking, and you can pull that out. I actually did this. I took every single call I had been on with a coach and
Uh-huh.
every single mastermind I've been on, and I took all of that and put it into a notebook LM.
Mhm.
And when I have questions for that coach, my
Yeah.
first step is to go there and ask it what it thinks. And if I like the answer, I just flow with it. But if I don't know, then I have a coach that I pay for, and I talk to him a couple times a week, and I'm also part of his mastermind group. And so a lot of times I'll get my questions answered by his digital clone that I made
Uh-huh.
long before I talk to him, because I've taken every single, it's 500 pages
Mhm.
of calls that have
Yeah.
been recorded. And it's fascinating how good it is at summarizing and surmising based upon what was said on those calls,
Oh
everything
yeah.
that's going on. So I totally
I'm
agree
doing
with
the
you.
same
Notebook
thing.
LMs,
My
LM's amazing.
apprentice, I told him you need to make a Scott Jarvis. You need to be pulling all this content and you need to ask the questions of that first and then run them by me maybe. But the idea is that we're not online at the same time and whatever else,
Yep.
and you can get a good answer. And so Notebook LLM is really slick. It takes just a teeny bit more effort to create a unique GPT and link data in Perplexity's spaces. If you're, excuse me, on the pro version, I'm paying for like 4 or 5 tools now, but it's so worth it because
Oh
I
yeah.
use them for different things.
So which are your
Um,
5 tools you're paying for? ChatGPT,
I'm paying
you're
for
paying for
Gemini,
Perplexity.
which I
Oh, you're
don't
paying
get a
for
lot of
Gemini.
value because I'm a Google Workspace and
I same thing. I get Gemini as well.
ChatGPT Teams for me and my apprentice, Perplexity and Grok. I haven't paid for Claude because the answers from the free stuff is so good that I don't need anything better.
Yeah.
But I can see possibly doing Claude. So I pay for
Yeah.
those full.
So Grok, why Grok?
Grok's just a different view. It's also, I tend to use it for more real world stuff. So what I'll
Give me an
tend to see
example.
is if I see a newsletter that I get on any topic that's pages of text, I'm never going to read that. And so I click on it, control A, paste it, and I just say, summarize bullet, give me the key outputs from this. And I can always dig in more. And it's a little bulleted thing that's maybe 10 bullets tall, and I go, got it. Again, that's all I care about is the Cliff Notes version of it. I can get some better, more current information. So I have a feeling that I'm going to end up start using both Grok and Perplexity for my searching more than I use Google.
I've already replaced Google 100%. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to start messing around with Grok. I haven't played with Grok much at all.
So I've been really happy with more current real world events feedback from Grok and asking it different perspectives than less on the business stuff, more on the real world stuff.
So my question for you then is going back to this new Amazon seller.
Hmm.
He's got all these tools. Give him 3 steps. What 3 steps should he take right now to consume which 3 tools, which 3 things would you say, go try these 3, go set up these 3? What would be the 3 things you would tell him to optimize around AI?
Well, the first thing would be a couple books. Sorry to jump ahead and
Fine.
not tech. I'd probably recommend early on reading The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. Just kind of a mindset that, look, you can do these things and it'll grow. If you're serious and you're on the business piece, might be a little early, but it's good listening to think about it ahead of time. Is the Exitpreneur's Playbook by Joe Valley. Talks about building a business that's sellable. The idea is when you first start, you're like, I'm going to do this for the next 10 years. Well, you don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it's both the mindset, am I building a business? Well, we're all going to exit the planet. We're all going to exit the business. It just happens over time. Or your life situation might change. You might go, I'm going to sell this business because then we can afford the new house wherever or fund college or whatever else. You want to build it because it becomes an asset to the family. So I would do those 2 things. The next piece is if you become a business, you've created the bank account, you have to do the accounting. Never took, if you're not the one that bounces the checkbook in your life, and if you have no one else, if you're single or whatever else, you're going to have to figure that out. You're just going to have to. So I would set up either Xero.com, Xero.com. You have to set up accounting, a general ledger, or Intuit QuickBooks Online. And if you're doing e-commerce, set up A2X accounting, which I've been working with for a decade. Those 2 tools will get you 80% of the way there of taking everything you use, sell on Amazon or Shopify or Walmart, eBay, Etsy, and getting that in. And then you just connect your bank feeds for this new bank, okay, which will either be Highbeam or Mercury are probably the 2 e-commerce specific online banks that I'd recommend. And then if you're looking for a personal online bank, I love SoFi. Been so happy since getting off Chase and going to SoFi. So that gets you that's enough that if you do enough of your bookkeeping, you're at least tracking your income and you sort of know what's going on.
What you just gave was a beautiful getting started guide from a technology and AI perspective for new Amazon sellers. That was fantastic. How can individuals reach out and get in touch with you?
You can go to my website, scharftech.com, scharftech.com, and check out my website. I've got a contact page there, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Scott Scharf, Scharf. And I'm happy to talk to sellers. Now, I do mostly work with sellers in the $1 to $50 million level, but I'm happy to point people in the right direction and provide them guidance. I love talking to sellers at different levels just to get them thinking about the right mindset and what it means to be an entrepreneur, and then helping them and helping them optimize their businesses so they have amazing businesses.
Beautiful. Well, I really appreciate you, Scott. Thanks for joining us on the show. I think that wraps us up for this episode.
Always happy to join you. It's all so much fun.